And welcome back to Mixed Media Live. We're here on another Friday evening. Evening for me, I guess it's late afternoon for Ben.
Yep.
But we're here every Friday at 7 p.m. live to do your favorite podcast, obviously. We talk about all things media, or art, I should say, whether it's any type of media like film or TV or whatever it happens to be, or it's music, or it's gaming, 3D modeling, business stuff relating to all those things, philosophy stuff related to all those things. We just like talking about our crafts. We like blending it together. We like bouncing our ideas off each other. We often learn from each other. I've definitely learned a lot, just listening to everyone else speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And today we've got the same thing going on, the same great thing going on. So today we've got two topics. We've got Ben, our resident music composer, talking about umbrellas of I'm going to mispronounce it. What is it?
I think it's Cherbourg.
Okay, there you
Roughly. But I guess I was saying earlier to Irving before we started that once I say that once, I'm going to just call it the film Umbrellas the rest of the show because I don't know any French and I don't want to get in any deeper trouble with my French, butchering my friend's pronunciation. So.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be able to tell you one way or another either. So he's going to talk about umbrellas and its similarities to a movie that a lot of people love, La La Land. And then afterwards, I'm going to talk about inflation, which I've talked about on the show before, but I'm going to be talking about it from a different angle, a little bit more additional information. But of course, none of it is financial advice if you're looking for it. So I am not a professional. But before we go into that, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella. How about you, Ben?
I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer.
Yeah, and before we jump into the first topic, actually, before we jump into what I was going to say, how was your week?
It's been pretty busy with, a lot of different stuff. It's part of going to school, different assignments and also, non-music, music assignments, but not like performance stuff and then performance stuff. So it's been a very busy week.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for me, a lot of cleaning house. That's one thing is a lot of the podcast episodes got edited a lot later than normal. It's because normally I edit a good portion of them, not all of them, on Saturday or something like that. And the Saturday was out at Family Fun Day, which went really well. I talked to a lot of people. A lot of people were really attracted to the 3D printer that was whizzing away at my booth. Definitely got some people to come talk to me, which was really nice. Some prospective projects in the future. Not small projects. I'm trying to get away from those. I probably deny people with small projects. But larger, more visionary type projects, which I'm kind of excited about. So shout out to anyone who was there who might be listening at Family Fun Day. And that's going to be happening again in the spring. So I'm kind of excited. And yeah, so that's how my week was, kind of catch up.
No, it sounds like a lot of potentially good opportunities there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So yeah, before I pass it off to Ben, I just wanted to say that we at Mixed Media do actually have a Black Friday sale going on, somewhat impromptu. So this is actually going to be from now until next Mixed Media episode, probably. If not, actually just realized next Mixed Media episode is Black Friday. If we end up doing that, we'll have to talk about that later. But if we are here next week, it'll still be. I'm going to say this from now and then till not this coming Friday, but the following Friday. So 2-week period. Our Mixed Media membership is going to be $3 a month instead of $5 a month. So it's quite the big reduction. That's what, like 40% off. That's 40% off. I did math. So that's 40% off. You can actually do an annual membership. I think it's $30 a month if you go annual, $30 a year, which if you go annual, that's I mean, for if you're out there and you're an artist and you want your stuff to get reviewed and you want like good feedback, or if you want access to this whiteboard over here, I mean, I think that's a pretty good deal. $30 for that kind of service, I think, is pretty good. So go to mixedmedia.locals.com. We've got a slow trickle of people just joining the the group. I don't know for what, if they're not supporting, because I don't really post there. But what you do get is when you do become a member, is it unlocks this post that gives you access to the live whiteboard, and it also unlocks a whole bunch of other things. When you go there, you'll see essentially how it links you to the different perks that you'll essentially get access to. So with that plug, I'm probably going to be plugging it throughout the night. But with that plug, I'll give it over to Ben.
Okay, so the Umbrellas of Cherbourg, or the Umbrellas as I'll call it. So this is a film that I was only familiar with the name because of La La Land. When La La Land came out, what was it, like Christmas 2016, I think?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Which even the same like release time as this film, because this is also released at Christmas in 1964. Many parallels, although I don't know that was an intentional parallel. Probably not. But I remember when La La Land came out. It was kind of a kind of big cultural phenomenon for a little bit, and some people, especially in the musical world, were mentioning it in connection to this film, Umbrellas. So I'd heard of it. I'd heard that it was considered one of the best movie musicals, if not certainly the best foreign movie musical in a lot of people's opinions. And we're gonna talk about what that actually means, because there's a difference between an American movie musical and a French movie musical. So I'd heard of it, but the only reason I kind of watched it recently was because Irving was plugging the sale on the Criterion Collection, and I looked at the available films from the Criterion Collection from my school, which is I think 140 films out of like 1,000 that I can watch. But I was really hoping they'd have some of the ones that I actually knew I wanted to watch are not available. No Malik is available. I don't know
for
why.
the price of free though. Well, actually, it's not free because you're paying tuition.
Yeah, the school. I'm paying tuition, and the school is paying something for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, but they had this film. It's the only shorter film that I had access to that I knew I wanted to watch at some point. So I figured I'd watch it. So I watched this last Friday, right after our last show. And yeah, luckily it's a shorter film than La La Land. It's only about an hour and a half long, which is good. So short film, and I have to say I was incredibly impressed by it. I can't think of any movie musical, anything in that genre that compares to it at all.
Wow.
Yeah, it's well, we'll talk about what's so impressive about it. But the other thing that really struck me is that it's not just like, I feel like people got this wrong when back in 2016, early 2017, when they were talking about La La Land being like, oh, it's like kind of an imitation of a style. No, it's not an imitation of a style of Umbrellas. It is Umbrellas, but worse. My opinion of La La Land has kind of slowly diminished with time, and it took a big hit after watching this film. And that's not to like diminish La La Land, as I still think it's a good film, and the music is really great for what it is. So still a very, very good film, but it is so much of an imitation of Umbrellas in a lot of ways. But it doesn't capture what makes Umbrellas so good. Okay, so what exactly is Umbrellas? That's kind of the main question. Okay, so we can just say that in general, it has the same general plot as La La Land. So if you know the plot of La La Land, you basically know the plot of Umbrellas, except that it's not about art. Okay. And yes, it is. Is it the most obvious plot from like scene number 1? Yes, but that's actually. I mean, it doesn't hurt this film at all. Normally, if I know like everything that's going to happen from the like first 5 minutes of the film, is less enjoyable to me. But this is definitely an exception to that. In some ways, the plot isn't the most important thing. So just in general, it's about this girl who is. It's unclear how old she is. Her mother says, you're only 16, you can't get married. And she says, I'm 17. So we're going to assume that she's 17 because she says she's 17. And her name is, Genevieve, I guess, is how you may pronounce it in the film. But Genevieve, I suppose. I'm not going to, try not to offend anyone, again, with my French pronunciation. And this 20-year-old named Guy. Okay. And he works at a like auto mechanic shop, and he's not done his military service. This is at the point where I guess France is drafting all men at some, for fighting somewhere in Africa. I don't really know the exact history. They don't really, because the film was made very close to the time that it's set in, so they don't really comment on that too much. I guess they assume that the audience knows what they're referring to. And he lives with his godmother who's raised him his whole life, and she's slowly dying. She's being cared for by this young lady named Madeline. Okay, so issue number 1 with La La Land is that the director, Hurwitz, he apparently tried to make this. No, Hurwitz is the composer. Damien Chazelle.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Damien Chazelle is the. They worked on all the same. They worked on this project together, composer and director. Chazelle, his senior thesis film at Harvard was as was described at the time. Of course, I've not seen it, but it was described as basically La La Land in slightly smaller form, about a jazz trumpet player instead of a jazz pianist and an aspiring actress. And it was called Guy and Madeline on a Park Bench, which means nothing except that those are the two of the big characters in Umbrellas.
It's pretty on the nose, if you ask me.
Yeah. It would be like, I don't know, if you're making a science fiction film as a student, and would your professor Irving have allowed you to make a short science fiction film, call it like Luke and Leia?
Yeah, that might get a certain amount of attention in a negative way.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, so right away we know that La La Land is very indebted to this. So in the film, essentially, Guy and Genevieve fall in love, and then he gets drafted. He has to go off to fight, and they end up the night before he leaves. She ends up getting pregnant. He leaves, and she doesn't get many responses from him while he's away, even though she's pledged her undying love and told him that she is going to wait for him no matter what, and that she, is pregnant with their child. And she at this meantime is courted by this guy who is actually, so Umbrellas is part of a trilogy of movie musicals by the same director, and the first one is not scored by Michel Legrand. Umbrellas and the next one, The Young Girls of Rochefort, are. They're both Legrand. So I don't know anything about the first one, Lola, except that the guy who ends up courting Genevieve actually references the fact that he was in love with Lola. So these films are like all tangentially related to each other. So I don't know anything more about that. But he ends up proposing to her, and she feels like she has to accept in some way because one, she's in a compromised position, being pregnant with no husband, and she lives with her mother, and their like umbrella shop is in financial ruin, and this guy's very wealthy. He's a diamond trader, and he's a nice cultured guy who's very in love with her and accepts her, and so she accepts his offer to get married, although it's not entirely clear how happy she is about it. He comes back very shortly because he'd been injured and released from service, and he finds that that Genevieve is married and left, and he kind of doesn't know what to do with his life. His godmother dies. He gets kicked out of his job, and then through, I guess, this person who cared for his godmother, Madeline, kind of helps him get him back on his feet, and they end up falling in love and getting married and having a very nice family life. And then the last scene is he has built his own American-style gas station, and he's playing with his little child. And I guess it's 5 years later, and Genevieve and her daughter stop by, and at the gas station, there's an interesting kind of final scene. So that's the film. Okay, I probably just ruined everything about the film if you haven't seen it, but if you know La La Land, it's probably already ruined for you anyway.
I was going to say that last scene sounds like the literal reverse genders of what happens at the end of La La Land.
Oh, well, I'm gonna talk about that in a second, but okay. So musically, so it's obviously plot-wise, so like the externals are a little bit different. And one of the main differences, and I think one of the reasons why Umbrellas is better, is that there are more characters. La La Land has 2 characters.
Yeah.
Just the 2 of them. Whereas this is a lot of dialogue, relationship between Genevieve and her mother, and Guy and his godmother, and Guy and Madeline. So there's a lot, and then also, of course, the jewel trader whose name I'm forgetting, who Roland is his name. Roland and Genevieve, and Roland and Genevieve's mother. Lots more relationships. I have to give depth to the characters. We have a much better sense of why they do what they do and what they're feeling and what pressures are being placed upon them. It also starts a little bit differently. Like, it's right from the beginning, Guy and Madeline are in love. We don't know how they met, but that's just presented to us that they're in love with each other, and thereafter we know what happens and why.
That's interesting because
La La Land.
In La La Land, like a good portion of the movie is them coming to know each other and falling in love. So that's an interesting difference.
Yes, yeah. So that's it. That's the departure. But I think La La Land is a little bit less convincing in that regard because we really, like, we can see some of the external problems, like why the characters, drift apart. But what we don't really see is we see them, at the beginning they're not together, but it's not, to me, entirely clear why they get together. That's a little bit odd to me, or unclear. That's one of my biggest issues with the film. I'm not really sure how they end up together.
Yeah.
So it's one thing if you, like, with Umbrellas, they start together, that's just how it is, and thereafter we know everything that happens and why. And then again, it has depth because we can see what the characters think in their conversations to other characters and what other influences there are other than, like, just their love for each other.
Yeah.
Okay, but musically, what does it mean that it's a people describe Umbrellas as kind of an unusual musical, and it's definitely not an American movie musical. And what that means is, and I don't know if any other countries do this, but it's entirely sung.
Interesting.
Music, singing all the way through. Every line is sung. Now it's kind of when they're mostly like dialogue stuff instead of more like song like things. It's what we call recitative, or kind of like sing speech. So it's not like part of like a composed musical. I mean, obviously it's composed, but it's not part of like an identifiable number. It just kind of flows like, I'm singing this line that I'm saying right now, kind of thing like that. Okay, so it's entirely sung in that regard, which probably made it a very difficult film to do in 1964.
Yeah, it was no kidding.
Yeah, so it was entirely recorded, all of the music and all the singing beforehand with different actors, because the actors couldn't sing. So different people singing, and then the actors lip synced it on set.
That's impressive.
It seems really impressive for an hour and a half long film. I probably couldn't tell because I don't know French, but I'm sure it's done pretty well for French speakers. So very difficult to put together, I'm sure. But also, in contrast to the standard American movie musical, there really aren't any big numbers to it. There are moments where it's more like this is an identifiable song, and it had a couple of big hits. I think the biggest one being English titled "I Will Wait for You." I think that was a kind of minor hit at the time. So there are identifiable musical moments, like this is an actual identifiable song. But there are very few of them, and they're really not set off from the rest of the texture because, one, they're singing all the time. They're singing, the dialogue, singing speech, leads right into it. And also, in contrast to the American movie musical, there's no dancing.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. So the musical moments are not very, just kind of, or if singing is just in the rules of this world, if singing is just how everyone is all the time, then the big songs are just kind of organic outflows of that, like more emotional speech in a way. So that's kind of the rules of this style of movie musical. The American movie musical, very different from that. It's a lot of, when they're not singing, they're talking. That it's a song, right? They occur at predictable parts of the plot. They advance the plot in particular ways. They're very obvious. They're only very catchy tunes. Normally, there's a lot of choreography involved with them, especially at that time period. And again, that's fine. That's just the rules of that kind of musical world. Okay, you don't question why some people do. I've seen people. I think we even had one of maybe our very first responding to Reddit. Someone complained about like musicals being unrealistic as people start singing. I don't buy that because the whole point is that's the rules of the road. It's just how it is. You just have to accept that is the universe that they live in. La La Land kind of fails in this. So I think La La Land is kind of a failed American movie musical. And I don't know whether that's because it's trying too hard to stick to umbrellas. So La La Land, it has some song numbers that are lots of choreography, and they are there to advance the plot in some way. But what's wrong with them? Well, they are all concentrated in like the first 15 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing. There's acting and dialogue.
Yep.
And then at the very end, we get, the audition song. All right, and then what's her name? Mia goes off and becomes an actress, and that's it. There are two other musical numbers that again kind of cross the boundary between life and music, which is I guess when the planetarium scene with the Griffith Observatory, and kind of dance and like rise into the stars in a kind of strange manner. And then at the scene at the end where they meet up again and we kind of see what could have been in their life if they had stayed together.
Yeah.
So in that sense, though, to me, the film it sets up the rules as we have an very kind of American style. This is where it's paying homage to something like another kind of Paris-inspired or French-inspired film, An American in Paris, which is one of the quintessential American movie musicals. So the opening is kind of inspired by that. Opening like first 15 minutes, first act, I suppose, them meeting and falling in love, and also comments on art and all those songs, and comments on what it's like to be in LA. I suppose that's the first song, Another Day of Sun. But then, so we understand that it's just an organic part of their world where people just break into song and dance, and then they don't do it for the majority of the film, and then it happens again. Yep. Only one other time. One, I think it would be very hard to turn this La La Land into an actual stage musical, because True. Where are the songs, and also where are the other characters? Yeah. So, and then you have music that like also acts in that weird way too. Like they literally like in the planetarium, they like look at each other, they hear this music, and they start dancing, and then they're in the sky, literally dancing.
Right? This is true.
And to me, that's like what are our musical rules? Why isn't all the music like that? Why then at the end is the music like that's very strange too, like we literally see the musicians playing. I think it's Wayne Bergeron playing the trumpet solo in the last big musical What If scene. So to me, the rules are not clear. It no longer makes sense to have like an actual song, like the audition song. Why you need to spread these things out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. To me, La La Land's kind of a failed movie musical, and that doesn't mean it's a failed film. Although I find it to be very derivative in a lot of other ways of Umbrellas. Like just literally the colors of Umbrellas are like absolutely the inspiration for all the colors of La La Land.
Yeah, as we were talking about before the show, if you're watching on video right now, if you're looking at the live tile right there, that yellow dress that picture is from the promotional picture. I think that's the cover of Umbrella's film, and I think you can already understand the color, the vibrancy, and particularly the obvious yellow dress. that appears in the La La Land, promotional, work as well. The yellow sundress looking thing. So yeah,
there are so many other elements too that are shared. Just like so, one of the things about Umbrellas is that it tells you every month you get a little like a title card. So like January, whatever the year is, 1958, February 1958. La La Land doesn't give you as many of those, but it does give you, it's like summer, fall, winter. Other not so subtle things. They meet again, the title card, 5 years later, same on both films. I mean, I don't think that's unintentional.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Also, a lot of the underscore for La La Land is very light and kind of in Legrand's world. Not exactly the same, but in a kind of like lighter French world and not in the American jazzier idiom that the big numbers are, which is a little strange. I mean, obviously when there's diegetic music, like they go to the jazz bar and people are playing, it's jazz. But the rest of it is kind of this lighter world. Even like the planetarium scene is kind of more like what Legrand is writing in Umbrellas. A little bit richer strings from Legrand, which I like. You really can't get away with that, like wall to wall, that kind of string writing anymore. And it kind of would feel out of place in an American movie today, but works very well in Umbrellas. So just a few other points. The end. I think the end of Umbrellas is far better. Number one, both people end up happy in some sense. So what you get the impression from the last scene that Genevieve is maybe has a little bit of regret that she didn't wait, especially when she sees how happy Guy is with his family. So you get the impression she's a little bit, but not to the extent you don't feel bad for her. Right. Whereas I kind of feel bad for Mia, that's her name, right? From La La Land, Mia and Sebastian, right? You kind of feel bad for her because she like gets her artistic dream, I suppose, but she seems to be married to this very like one-dimensional piece of cardboard. I don't know if that was intentional, but that's how the guy comes off.
Okay, but that was at the era of cinema when like there were a lot of main characters that were literally just blank, and I don't understand. I don't know if we're still in this era. To be honest, we might be if I went to the theater and watched a random film, but honestly, from the mid 2010s, maybe even early 2010s, and maybe up until now, we get a ton of main characters, by and large female, oddly enough. But but there are some male characters like this as well, who are just literally blank. Like they're just not people. They have no depth, And now that I think about it, I think, definitely, the dude in La La Land is definitely in that category.
It's unfortunate too because, Umbrellas gives us the initial relationship and then the relationships that everyone ends up with as well. It gives us that story, which I think is nice. You feel sympathy for both characters, and you kind of understand how they arrive where they do and why. Right? We don't see exactly how Mia and Sebastian get to where they are in La La Land.
Yeah.
Of course, obvious parallel. He sets up his own jazz bar instead of the American gas station, but same thing. Of course, he doesn't. I guess he feels happy in the end that he's got his jazz bar. I guess, but the last song kind of leaves you hanging. And you're like, well, they're happy with what they have, but also like they're also have this 9-minute song with her imagining what could have happened if they'd been together. So are they actually better off? Whereas with Umbrellas, you definitely feel like there's no scene where they imagine what could have happened. We just kind of get like they meet each other, kind of look at each other, and then go back to being happy with their families.
Yeah.
So obviously there are possibilities there. The Genevieve when Guy asks how their daughter technically is doing. And she says, "Oh, she reminds me of you." There's something there, but we're not like presented, all these fantasies in their heads.
Yeah.
Um, so I personally like that a lot more. And then the main thing though for me between them is that Umbrellas is just such a sweet and innocent film. No, it's not like a innocent like in a totally morally like this is a G-rated film for a 5-year-old.
Right.
It's not. There are some implications about certain kind of behavior, but it has this air of innocence to it from the start. They are in love. They just kind of sing for a long time. I love you so much in very different, varied ways, very musical ways. But that's it just has this sense of like youthful innocence, all these bright colors that never changes. The colors are always bright. It ends up pretty much happily. The music stays in the same kind of happy, light world the whole way.
Yeah.
And La La Land doesn't, to me. It feels like it's imitating something of this, but not capturing what makes Umbrellas great. It doesn't have that innocence. I get mad at both of the characters at various points. I might disagree with the characters in Umbrellas, but I don't get mad at them. I'm not frustrated with them. Though it tries to have the colors, it's just a grittier film. And it brings in all of these questions about pursuing one's artistic dreams versus relationships, which that's too complicated for Umbrellas.
Yeah.
It's a simple, straightforward, innocent film. It just feels like springtime in visual format.
Well, Damien has with Whiplash shown that he's really troubled over this career thing. I think,
To be fair, LA is a grittier city than Cherbourg. At least from the parts of Cherbourg that you see in the film. Yeah, I don't know. And like I said, it sets up rules and then it doesn't abide by them. Whereas Umbrellas is very consistent with its rules. You may not like them if you are a huge fan of the American movie musical, but it stays within its rules. And La La Land, I don't know, sets up rules, sets up other rules, and then who knows? So heavily indebted to Umbrellas, but to me, it just doesn't rise to Umbrella's level in any way. I do think the songs are fantastic in La La Land. Music overall is fantastic. But yeah, I don't know. It just, in its imitation, it just doesn't capture like the best parts of Umbrellas.
Yeah, like I mean, you said it was one of the best musicals that you've seen. Did I catch that right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the best movie musical I've seen.
That's a pretty big statement, eh?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very different than something like, well, okay, it's probably around, tied with Fiddler on the Roof. Very different than Fiddler on the Roof. Very different than something like Sound of Music or I don't know, other good movie musicals that I like. Music Man is just kind of a fun one. My Fair Lady. Very different than those. Yeah. I actually haven't seen American in Paris, although I know them. Well, obviously I know the music for it, but it's actually an important film in that it kind of not only reestablished Gershwin's reputation, but brought some of his lesser-known songs, kind of turned them into standards. So very important. And obviously that's another film that you have to think about when you talk about La La Land, because that is like the quintessential American jazz musical.
Mm.
But that may influence like the rules that La La Land then breaks. But in its essence, La La Land, I think, is umbrellas in an American Los Angeles, Hollywood loving, or Hollywood at least discussing manner.
Right, yeah. I will say, from my experience watching La La Land a long time ago, it did feel it did feel like the movie just stopped trying to be a musical, like, just kind of arbitrarily. In fact, it happens it kind of happens smoothly, which is why by the time you get to the end of the film, or like, when's the next time you get music after the beginning section? What was it again?
Yeah, so I think literally the song is like when we get the song when they're like looking over this, city skyline, city
Oh, right.
lights, where they haven't even. That's like the point of that is to progress like their relationship to like consider each other, I guess.
Hmm.
Then we get like the planetarium number, but other than that, there's no singing until the audition.
Yeah, I feel like every time music came back from like the beginning slew of music, it felt like, oh yeah, this is a musical. I forgot that I'm watching a musical. Um, that's interesting. I think the part about La La Land that is the most compelling to me is the visuals, because like, if I think, oh, and also the story structure is somewhat interesting. Although in reflection and retrospect, I don't think I'm as interested in it as I was, like, when I first watched it. Um, it holds its first act for a long period of time, and it's compelling through that entire period of time just off of one emotion, pretty much, which I find interesting. But yeah, I would say also that my opinions kind of like trailed a little bit over time. Definitely at the time it was a big film.
Well, if you like the visuals of La La Land, then I think you will enjoy the slightly more, uh, not grainy, but you probably know the better filmic word than I do, but more like actual film
Yeah.
qualities of the colors of umbrellas.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure I would. I freaking love film. I'm obsessed with how film looks. It's something else. um, yeah, and with the same director, with Whiplash. Whiplash is basically a copy of Black Swan. It's like the same exact film. Now, I that's a little bit different because that story structure of the obsessed artist is kind of archetypal in a way. So it's not like Black Swan is completely original in that sense, but like it's like almost exactly like Black Swan, just swap ballerina for a drummer, and make it a lot less, remove like the magic realism, like here or there, that happens in Black Swan. Not even magic realism, like, I guess, um, introspective moments of Black Swan. I will say though, with Whiplash, I actually liked it better than Black Swan. I actually liked it a lot better than Black Swan, um, which is interesting. I think it's interesting that these two movies are basically copies. Now I'm wondering about the rest of his filmography.
I mean, what else has he done other than First Man?
Yeah, he's done First Man. Isn't he directing like some Marvel film? Like, that hasn't come out yet.
Really?
I don't know. That seems the thing to do these days. Let me see. He's La La Land, um, Whiplash. Oh yeah, I forgot. Oh, he was a writer though. He didn't direct it, unless he also directed it. But 10 Cloverfield Lane. No, he did not direct it. I don't think this movie was. Oh, okay. Has okay reviews. Um, but yeah, so he hasn't been like he hasn't been trying to make a movie as often as he can, it seems. So It's interesting. But the movies that he has made, I wouldn't be surprised if First Man turns out to be a copy of something else. And First Man, if it's not a copy of something else, that's his by far least critically acclaimed film. People didn't really like that film, so if he did come up with that originally, that's kind of a that shows a little bit of a pattern that's unfavorable. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, I mean, like Ben said, that's on Criterion, and Criterion Collection is still on sale on Barnes and Noble. I wish I had I feel like I'm advertising for them, but I don't have a promotion link, and I don't get any money from promoting it. But yeah, if you want to get a half off, I'm sure it's on Barnes and Noble as well as the rest of the collection.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy this. It's $20. Like, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Why not own it? Exactly.
I'm definitely gonna rewatch it, so
yeah,
as well.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Is that it for topic?
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Cool. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, so those for those of you who are watching out there on the interwebs, we are a live show, but we do splice this up and repackage it for proper wide consumption during the week. A lot more people listen to it in post than they do listen to it live. So what I do is I clean it up, I edit it out, all the bloopers and all that kind of stuff. Starting now, though, oh no. Every time I get a phone call, my Skype messes up. Let me fix that real quick again. Sorry about that. Let's get back into the Skype call. Sorry about that. Okay. So yeah, so we repackage it. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so starting this week, probably I'm gonna start taking down the live stream version. The reason why is because it attracts views, but not in post. Like, people will find it and they will click on it, but they don't tend to watch for long periods of time. Whereas like with the final spliced versions, that audience retention actually is pretty good for by and large, depending on the particular thing. So it is more beneficial for us to split them out. So if you want to see the actual live version unedited, if there's some blooper that I take out or some side conversation I end up removing because it's distracting or something like that, if there's anything like that you want to see, I think that's the first type of thing I'm going to be posting on our locals page, which I'm shilling right now. So if you want to see all of our raw live footage, it's going to be permanently linked to at mixedmedia.locals.com. That I think I'm going to leave open for free for now. But while you're there, the Black Friday sale is going on, $3 a month. That's 40% off of what it normally is. Or you can, I think if it's working properly, you can pay $30 for a whole year. Although, as we'll be talking about in a moment about inflation, it's actually much more beneficial financially speaking for you to do $3 a month. But you can join there and you get a whole bunch of perks, including a whole bunch of exclusive interactive stuff, including this live whiteboard on the right of the screen that says Black Friday sale there. That's actually a live whiteboard if you saw me drawing on it earlier. Anyway, those are my plugs. Got to get the obligatory plug in, but now we're going to essentially reintroduce the podcast. Ben, you want to reintroduce the podcast?
Sure. All right. Well, welcome to Mixed Media. This is our second episode of the week. I can find, if you're watching in post, you can find my discussion of and comparison of the umbrellas of Cherbourg and La La Land. And yeah, so again, this is Mixed Media. We are a live streamed podcast where we like to talk about art in general, art in our specific fields, art in philosophy, art in business, like we're going to hear from Irving here in a second. So yeah, welcome to our podcast.
Yeah, welcome. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so yeah, definitely check out our other stuff on our pages. I would really appreciate it. Um, yeah, I won't bore people on live about plugging it again. I'll just splice it together in a different order about the mixed media page. So I'll recut that. But anyway, so today I'll be talking about inflation. And so I've talked about this before on the channel. It was actually a quite popular episode, I think, in retrospect. So if you want information that I won't be covering here at all, and this is entertaining information because nothing I say on the show is is financial advice. You can ingest it how you please. You can do your own research and come to your own financial, legal, medical, educational, whatever call conclusions that you want to. I am not responsible for your decisions, so don't sue me. That is my disclaimer at the top of this. But yeah, there you'll find some interesting stuff about inflation. I'm going to come at it from a different angle this time because while I was extremely right, more than right, about the inflation situation as it stands, I was also a lot softer on the situation that it ended up being. So I remember saying that I think I said something like 8% would be quite high, and I didn't imagine that I would actually be seeing an 8% number appear before me. So this is a bit of a different situation. There's a lot of different complex things going on, but again, this is entertainment for you to ingest, and you make your own decisions. I'll be going through essentially the situation as it stands right now because it's really not the same as it was when I talked last time, and then I'll be going over what I'm doing or have been doing about it. The first thing, though, is you're listening to this and you're like, okay, this is an art podcast. Why the heck is he talking about inflation? And one, this is, I have a good bit of financial literacy, so I do want to share that in general. But particularly for artists, I think that a lot of times artists don't tap into the financial literacy aspect of things. And while that could provide them the freedom to do what they want in ways that I don't think are well understood or well appreciated in the art world. So if you're an artist, if you're self-employed or whatever situation you are, honestly, any of this information could be useful. Wherever you are, I just hope that you take this information, maybe you learn something from it and you make your own decisions based off of whatever the heck I say. And that will help you gain freedom through troubled times because those are the scariest times to be an artist. You are not an essential service in the sense that, if you don't exist, the world will explode. If all artists didn't exist, then the world probably would explode. But, you as an individual, unfortunately, you're kind of expendable when the economy is not doing so great. So it's good to keep your eyes on the things that will help you stop being seasick. Because I definitely understand that feeling because I am very vulnerable right now because I'm self-employed, I'm an artist, and I'm trying to scrap it out and make this thing myself just like the rest of us. So that's the motivation here. That's why it's on mixed media. So a brief definition of inflation, not definition, or just, I guess, off the top of the head description of inflation, because even if you didn't watch the last one, you will not understand anything I'm saying from here on out if you don't understand what inflation is. Inflation is essentially the decrease of buying power is one way to think of it. There's actually many competing theories of inflation, so I won't bore you with it. I'm just going to use the most useful and understandable understanding of it. But basically, it's the reduction of buying power of a fiat currency. So in the United States, our fiat currency is the United States dollar. So my $1 can buy less, essentially, because inflation goes up. Now, normally we do have inflation year over year that's between 1% to 3%, depending on the year. That's what our Federal Reserve has decided is good for growth, for economic growth. There's dispute about that. I have no opinion one way or the other, but 1% to 3% is what's considered to be normal as of late. So that's what inflation is. So you can expect that inflation is high, it's higher than 3%, and you expect that prices are going to go up, or in some indirect way or direct way, your dollars are not going to be able to go as far as they normally would. So that is what inflation is in a nutshell. Now, last time I talked about the Federal Reserve, and I said some things, and I was very tentative about saying them because I don't want to come off as weird or something like that. But now that I've been vindicated, I feel like I can say whatever the heck I want. The Federal Reserve is a cheerleader for the economy. There are many things, and there are many things I could call them that have nothing to do with this discussion, so I won't. But the thing that I think people need to understand as to why you can understand why they would lie is because one of their functions, one of the things that we've come to see them as doing, is taking care of the economic health of the country. They're not just seen. I'm talking about seen. I'm not talking about chartered. They're not just seen as monetary policy. They're seen as all economic policy. If you read articles about the Federal Reserve, you'll see this, that they'll talk about things that don't sound like monetary policy related, like, grocery prices, or I don't know, inequity in grocery prices or something like that, right? This seems more like something that Congress should deal with, but, the Federal Reserve is commenting on these things. And the reason why is because over time they've been seen as the arbiter of economic health, right? For right or for wrong. So that's why I could see why they would not be completely truthful about their analysis, or at the very least extremely negligent about their analysis, or at least, telling you the best side of things that they possibly could, because they don't want they don't want people to lose confidence in the economy, because once people lose confidence in the economy, things tend to crash. First, the stock market, because it's a fickle one. The thing they're worried about the most by far is definitely the stock market too. Don't let them lie to you. They'll say, the stock market doesn't measure economic health, and they're right about that, by the way. Stock market health does not mean economic health, but they care a lot about the stock market because that's primarily where their influence seeps into the easiest. So it's the area where they have the most tangible control. So they don't want the stock market to crash. They don't want the economy to crash. So what do they say? Everything is great, because economic health is partly, the confidence of consumers, the confidence of business people affects economic health as well. If you don't think that, your investment is going to do well over the next year because the economy is about to crash, then you're not going to invest, right? And they don't want that. And they don't want to be blamed for whatever happens if that happens. So they're incentivized to tell you everything is good all the time, as they still do today, which is increasingly a funny thing to watch. But that's why when they kept saying inflation is transitory, you have to take that with a grain of salt and look at why they're saying that. Look at their data, their tables, all this kind of stuff. Why are they saying it's transitory? When you look at it at the time, there was no reason for them to believe it was transitory, practically speaking. And that's why my prediction was correct. So there you go. So now what is the Fed saying now that makes me believe that? So the Fed is currently saying that, okay, inflation is not transitory, but it will end at a sooner date than that people expect, and economists are starting to project. It's going to end sometime in halfway in 2022 or something like that, or maybe the end of 2022 or something like that. A longer time period than they originally predicted, but still shorter than, let's say, inflation is going to be around for the next 5 to 10 years, higher than controllable, or we're going to have a crash sufficient to correct the inflation problem, but it's going to be nasty, right? They want to say everything's going to stay healthy and chug along until the end of 2022, and inflation is going to cool down by 2022, and everything will be great. Now, this is also not true. I'm going to put myself on the record saying that is not a accurate depiction of the scenario. And I'll go through a few things that I think are particularly egregious that they're saying. So, And you'll see these things echoed everywhere, from media to politicians to everywhere. You'll see these things echoed, and I don't think anyone understands what they're talking about, and that's putting it lightly. But the first thing is, I see a lot of people saying wages are going up, and that I find that really interesting. There's actually an interesting poll. I don't remember who did the poll, and I don't remember the exact numbers of the poll. But if you polled people, more people would say they'd rather have high, let's say 10% inflation with 8% wage growth than 8% inflation with 10% wage growth, which that reflects a lack of understanding of how things work. Because literally, if your wages are going up 8%, but inflation's going up 10%, your real wages, that's the technical term for it, your real wages have gone down 2%. 10 minus 8, roughly speaking, your real wages have gone down 2%. So your wages are not inflating. So wages are going up, but true inflation is not known because inflation is not an equation. It's not something you can just go and plug in an equation and find the inflation number. In fact, there are so many different equations that's something that everyone quibbles about all the time, is which inflation equation to use.
Right. Isn't there, it depends on like what you put, what's the, I think I'm trying to remember the term from macroeconomics that I did, macroeconomic theory that I did. Like it's what basket you're using. I think it's the term that they use, right? Like basically what particular goods you're measuring, and is it representative of other things in that sector or of other sectors overall? Yes,
exactly. I think part of this misunderstanding comes from misunderstanding on the public's part. I think there's a lot of negligence from people who actually do know better, including the Fed. But misunderstanding on the public's part is that people don't know as much about the economy as they want you to believe. This is partly because, and this is more my opinion than, and I think the opinion of many people, but more my opinion than I could say I know 100%. But excuse me. Inflation, sorry, not inflation, but economics is this thing that when you change one thing, because whatever model you have says change the thing, it has unpredictable results necessarily, fundamentally. Like mathematically, there's no way for you to know. It's if you've taken differential equations or something nerdy like that, you'll know there are concepts called like unsolvable differential equations, and they're quite common in mathematics. They're quite common in actuarial sciences. And the essential point I'm getting at is that centrally planning economic, even small portions of economics, is sometimes mathematically impossible. So whereas people want to pretend it is possible, it's mathematically impossible. The mere knowledge that you gain by running your models, even if they're 100% accurate, changes the entire model. That's what I mean. It's philosophically not possible, So, yeah, I'm not going to get into that whole thing. But but the point is that inflation is not an equation you can just plug in and get the number. When the Fed comes out with their inflation numbers, when it's higher than expect that they could not fudge the equation to make it look better. That's what happened. So from year to year, the Fed will change the equation. From month to month, sometimes they change what sectors they're looking at. They'll tell you this if you look at their white papers, and they'll tell you it verbally too. If you listen to Jerome Powell and other people speak, they'll say it verbally, but that's not what you see in the filtered article that you get out of that summarizes the meeting, right? You're not going to get what factors they looked at this time. So they'll say, oh, well, we don't want to look at this because this, and this. Well, these are all human things, right? It's not going to give you an aggregate understanding of things, and an aggregate understanding of things might be fundamentally impossible, is what I'm trying to tell you. So oftentimes the best measure is actually just feel. How does it feel when you go out to the store and you go try to buy something? How does it feel if you're a business owner to try to work with your supply? How does it feel? Are things generally rising? Because if you want to know what real inflation is, all that matters is its impact to you. As a regular person, right? You're not essentially planning. You don't care about how things interact with each other. You just care about your bottom line, right? So if you think about it from your bottom line, inflation is your dollars going a lot less far, your life becoming a lot less hard to manage at the same quality of life, right? One random example again.
More difficult, right?
Yeah, more difficult. Yeah. So one thing that's interesting that doesn't get put into inflation is time. Time is not measured in inflation. A great example that I've seen some people posting about all over the internet in comment sections. I love reading comment sections about these financial things because you get the on-the-ground truth, what's called ground truth, right? You get people's real experiences. Some people who work with supply chains are saying that they sometimes their supply is not necessarily more expensive, but it takes longer to arrive. That's a different type of inflation because they have to pass off that inefficiency to the consumer. Or you get a different kind of inflation that's even harder to measure, which is because there are not enough employees at the call center of that supplier. When you have an issue with that supplier, it takes you, instead of 2 hours to resolve that issue, get on the phone and talk to someone. Now it takes 2 weeks to resolve that issue. That kind of inefficiency is extremely hard to measure with inflation. So that's all to say it's difficult. Okay, so here are some of the things. So we just talked about wage inflation. It's not keeping up as far as we know. It depends on the numbers that you look at, which is why I gave that whole disclaimer. Wages are not keeping up, and things change at different times. So wages might spike 15%, let's say, year over year in some small time period. But then if you stretched it out to the future that you don't know anything about, wages might actually, that sharp increase might last for such a short period of time that overall in that whole time period, wages actually only went up 8% if you looked at a larger time frame. So you can really manipulate these numbers in a very bad way that doesn't give you any meaningful information. So real wages are not likely to be compensating for the monetary inflation that we're experiencing. The second thing that people don't appreciate when it comes to wage inflation is that capital is concentrating like crazy. What I mean by that, I mean the extremification of rich and poor is just, and the pace is absurd. It's absurd how much richer. And people are talking about 1%. We're not talking. That's not even the group we're talking about. We're talking about the top 0.1% is getting massively more wealthy than even their peers below them. That's how extreme the stratification is happening. And the bottom, 10% is, with inflation, it looks like things are going up, but they're lagging a lot slower, than everyone else. Now, this happens. Why? Because if you kill small businesses with inflation and other problems, if you kill the smaller companies, the millionaires, right, the millionaire class, you kill, businesses that are worth, less than $1 billion, you start killing these things off. Who's going to take the business? So imagine your grocery store around the street dies because of economic pressures, and Walmart just sucks up that business. Everyone now has to go to Walmart, the big box store, right? This is something I care. But you may say, well, I don't care. I think that's grossly mistaken if you don't care, but that's my opinion. But if wage inflation, so people might be able to find a replacement job, but that replacement job is no longer with that mom and pop shop. That replacement job has now moved to these gigantic mega corporations. So the dynamics are not the same. It's not like a literal one-to-one, situation. And then the last thing with regards to wage inflation is that there's an automation bubble, right? So imagine you are McDonald's is the classic example. Your burger flipper is literally a number to you because you're a big corporation and everybody's just a number, basically. And the number is how much does it cost to get this person to flip burgers on a stove, right? At at a certain point, if wages keep inflating, a big company that has big reserves like McDonald's is going to invest in replacing you with a machine. It will make more sense at a certain point to take money they would have spent on your wages and also putting up with you and all the things that come with humans, take you and replace you with a machine. So if wages inflate, that might not be as good of a thing as you might think it is, especially if real wages start inflating too much. The funny thing is, you get this thing called price wage spiraling, which happens when prices go up. And in order for people to want to stay at their jobs, people have to offer higher wages to keep so people can live by the same means that they have been. Then the prices that the prices of the goods that those companies are producing have to go up in order to compensate for their workers costing more. Then prices go up, then the workers have to be paid more. So you get this, like, it's called wage price spiraling. So this is not a good thing. In short, no matter how you slice this, it's essentially a symptom of stagflation, which I won't go into. But there's that. The second lie I would say, is that the Fed will just raise rates in order to help. Now, I'm not going to explain what that means. You can look up. Don't look it up in don't let some major media site explain what rates are. Just go to like some encyclopedia or something instead. And look up what raising rates, or go on YouTube. Actually, you'll probably find generally better explanations from random YouTubers, and have them explain to you what rates are. Now, the only thing I will say is that when rates go up, debt is cheaper, debt is more expensive. When rates go down, debt is less expensive. So it's easier for banks and entities to acquire debt when rates are down. This incentivizes people to take on debt, which incentivizes people to try to grow their businesses or pay off whatever they're trying to do. Now, this is a thing the Fed controls exclusively, which I could rant about, but that's not for today. The problem here, though, is that rates are extremely low right now because of the crisis that we were experiencing before. They wanted to make sure that rates were as low as possible so the stock market didn't crash, because ultimately, rates affect the stock market in a very sensitive way. So when rates went down, the stock market boomed. So this boom that we're seeing in the stock market is a byproduct of two things. It's a byproduct of rates being low and inflation being high, which I'll get into in a moment. But the lie that's going around right now is that the Fed will raise rates to curb inflation when necessary. Now, they've been saying they'll raise rates for the past 6 months. Every month they're like, oh, not this month, next month. Oh, not this month, next month. Okay, they're not going to raise rates. I'll tell you why, or they're not going to raise rates anytime soon. I'm not going to go get into a different topic, but they might raise rates, but I'll tell you why they're reticent to or may never. When you raise rates, the stock market is going to die. Guaranteed. The moment you raise rates, stock market dies. The moment you raise rates, which has cascading effects everywhere else, not because of the underlying assets are going to die because the stock market dies, but because people's pensions are going to die. People's 401ks are going to die. People's hedge fund investments are going to die. And what this does is it does a whole bunch of unpredictable things to the economy, all of which is shocking. When things change too quickly in the economy, you get crashes, So I'm not going to bore you with that, but they can't raise rates. They can't do it because they've already let the cat out of the bag. We saw this in the last recession too, with quantitative easing, with changing of rates up and down. We never went back to the rate that we had pre-2008, and they might make a million and one excuses as to why they would do that, but you can look back to October of 2018 or 2019, back when I was an early stock investor. All of a sudden, my portfolio went, and I didn't understand that the Fed raising rates would do that to my stock portfolio because they tried to raise it by like some 0.1 or 0.2%. And the stock market was like, no, oh no, panic, panic, panic. Everything crashed, and they decided, no, we're not. We're going to go back to what we did before. We're just going to leave everything because they don't understand how to control things as well as they would like you to believe. So they can't raise rates because it'll kill the economy. And they can't let inflation go forward because it'll kill the economy. What's the common denominator? The economy dies, right? Either way, it's just a choose your own adventure of which way it dies, which way is better. And it would be better, in my opinion, if they rose rates, but that's not, I'll say, politically advantageous for them at the moment. So that's the rate discussion that is a lie, in my opinion. The third thing is, just buy a house, because houses are inflating faster than inflation. This is my favorite, because it's not easy to buy a house. You can't just up and decide. Ben, if you just decided right now that you want to buy a house to combat inflation, could you just go and buy a house?
Certainly not in LA.
Yeah, exactly. The funny thing is, these people, I saw this news report where this person said 50% of people are invested in homes. And they're saying it as if that was a protecting thing. 50% of people are not invested in homes. That means, half of people have no inflation protection with with an underlying real estate asset. Whoop-dee, great. We're in a great situation. Which I just thought was a bit ridiculous. But housing is in a bubble. I'm not going to bore you with the details again. I'm going to say that a lot. Housing is in a bubble. This bubble may pop at any time. It's very similar, eerily similar at this point to 2008. Not in the cause, but in what the government is trying to do in order to combat it, which is going to end up exacerbating the bubble. So the Fed and Congress is talking about making debt or mortgages easier to acquire, which might sound good because you're like, mortgage is easier to acquire to buy houses that might otherwise have been too expensive. This is not. That's kind of the 2008 logic. What you end up with is a whole bunch of bad mortgages. Now, I don't believe it would be as bad as 2008, those mortgages, because no one's going to make balloon mortgages anymore. Because that was a I think it might have even been the HUD, the what is that? The urban development, housing and urban development.
Urban development.
Yeah. They changed some loan structure to allow for people to offer mortgages that had balloon payments in them. That was previously illegal. Then housing prices were going up so much that they said, okay, let's allow for alternative financing to people who might not otherwise have qualified for it, in order to allow people to pay for these homes so that Americans can have access to buying homes. Now, this doesn't work because you get a whole bunch of crappy loans, and then you get the government having to bail out and the economy crashing. Now, we're doing this again. This is being proposed again. I don't think we'll see balloon mortgages or anything like that because that's too taboo since 2008. I don't think it'll be as bad, but we're seeing the same sort of language of, well, houses are becoming too expensive, so we need to make mortgages cheaper. And I don't think that's a very good route to go. So there's that. So those are the things that I think people need to be aware of as to what to look out for in terms of the lies, in my opinion, lies that are being told about inflation. Now, in terms of what catalysts might make inflation even worse, we have a winter coming that is going to be vicious. This winter, the literal cold. I'm not saying, I don't know if it'll be colder than normal. That's not what I'm saying. But the cold of this coming season, it might be the last straw for the global economy. We're already seeing it in Europe. I won't bore you with the details. It's actually a really funny story. Maybe I should have like a finance podcast or something like that. But or maybe that's something I'll do on Mixed Media, like exclusive content. If you guys want it, just let me know. But there's stuff happening abroad that has to do with energy, right? Like oil, natural gas, a whole bunch of stuff that I won't bore you with the geopolitics of. But there's a lot of silliness happening. And in this silliness, again, don't look this up on, mainstream media and expect to get even close to accurate description of what's going on, whether that's negligence or not, take your pick depending on the journalist. What's going to happen here is essentially oil prices are going to go through the roof. Now, we in the United States, we have not experienced that yet, because we're somewhat insulated from this until as of late, where we sort of intentionally exposed ourselves to this problem. In Europe, they're already experiencing this problem. Gas prices are astronomical in Europe right now. Now, why I say the cold is going to make this worse is because Europe does not have enough oil or energy in general to get itself through next winter. And I mean that literally. Like, I mean, to heat homes. They will end up with enough, but they're going to end up exhausting the global supply of energy to get there. This is something that they're very heated about now ahead of winter, that everyone's arguing about ahead of winter. This is just another inflation problem, guys, because what's going to end up happening is energy is going to inflate. Supply and demand will take over. It's kind of a self-inflicted wound, but again, we'll bore you with the details. But, essentially, energy prices are going to skyrocket. They're going to try to buy anything from anywhere to prevent a health catastrophe is really what would happen. And a national security problem is essentially what would happen in Europe. And gas prices are going to go through the roof, and that's going to bleed over here because we're also doing a self-inflicted wound right now, and we're already starting to see it in gas prices. If you've been driving around and looking at what you're putting in your tank, it's that ain't nothing. If we're looking at Europe as any indication. Now, the second catalyst for inflation is the infrastructure bill. Now, what people don't need to understand is that, and I'm not going to comment on the politics of it. I'm not interested in commenting on the show. But in terms of just being realistic, being real, because that's all we care about, is we care about our bottom line, our pockets, right? This, like I said, the inflation is caused largely by monetary policy and money supply. We literally just have so many dollars in. That's really simplifying it. There's all other causes of inflation as well, but we have an increased supply of US dollars. That's pushing the value of the US dollar down. It's just supply and demand. It just leaks into the economy in ways that don't look seamless because that's not how it ever works, because our economies are complex, right? So with this infrastructure bill, I recommend that you stay away from anything that is telling you that it pays for itself. That is a fantasy. It does not pay for itself. Now, we've already spent, I think, $9 trillion, I think is the number, since the beginning of the pandemic on various economic relief stuff, right? So you're thinking to yourself, okay, another 1.5 trillion is not that much more. And that's true as a ratio, right? But it's like, we have not seen the inflation from the original $9 trillion fully seep into the system yet. As a shorthand, the stock market is essentially absorbing it as a huge shorthand. So we're not seeing it bleed into all sectors of the economy yet. So adding another $1.5 trillion when you have no idea what's going to happen, and you're saying it pays for itself, which is ludicrous. These people are trying to convince you, and I mean this sincerely, that giving the IRS more money will somehow raise $414 billion. That's an enormous amount of money. $414 billion from increase in efficiency at the IRS. There's no sincere economic analysis that would agree with that. So, they'd be lucky to increase their revenues by, $10 billion with increased efficiency. But anyway, so there's that. So that $1.5 trillion is not going to pay for itself, which means it bleeds into the system, which means it's another catalyst for inflation. And the thing is, no one actually knows if it's actually $1.5 trillion because the bill is like the size of, probably a person. If you ask different people how much does it cost, and you get different answers. Up to $4 trillion is the highest estimate I saw, and that was from I think a CNBC article. So that's not even a crazy thing to say. So there's that. So that's also a catalyst. So these are problems. Now, last time I talked about inflation, I gave you a whole bunch of entertaining solutions. Not solutions that you have to take, but things I was doing. I'll put it that way. Things I was doing. You can still go back to that and learn something from it, and make your own decisions about if you want to copy me or not. With the asset split, now I was talking about conventional asset splits, so I was saying keep some cash on the side as a safety, just in case your car breaks down, medical bill, something. Keep a healthy reserve of cash. Invest in real estate if you can. I cannot, so I'm in that category. Invest in stocks, invest in crypto, invest in gold. And I had my preferred aggressive portfolio for that. Now, I've done really well for myself with that, but we're in a different scenario in the sense that everything is inflated a lot more than I expected on the high end, which means you might be priced out of all those things. What do I mean by that is those things might cost too much for you to enter into now, and it's a lot more risky for you to enter into them. So the stock market is in an inflationary bubble right now, essentially. It's been doing well for me, but I cannot say with as much confidence that you should enter now, given that it's in such a bubble, as I was saying that it might be a good idea before, right? So these are things that go back to the prior video, learn as much as you can and decide what value you might get from it. Not learn from me, I mean learn from as many sources as possible. And you're going to have to look at your own life situation and make your own choices about investing in assets. The crazy thing, though, and the other risk factor for those traditional assets is that cash just is inflating too much for you to hold too much of it. Like, you have to get rid of it. Like literally, like, you need to not have cash, like, as much as you can. So even that safety chunk that I said you probably should have is kind of a risk. That safety might, I mean, imagine you said, oh, here's this money pot for you, a rainy day fund, but 2 years from now, that rainy day fund might not even be able to cover your emergency, right? So it's risky to hold that cash, in your emergency fund. I still recommend you have one, but understand the kind of thing that we're experiencing right now. And I'm funny enough, I'm in New York. I think from talking to people, I'm experiencing it a lot more than other people are. I think that's what's happening. But my grocery bills have gone up like ridiculously. Just on a firsthand basis. My cost of living has gone up quite drastically thus far. So your money doesn't go as far even now. So the problem with real estate is it's in a bubble. The problem with stocks is in a bubble. The problem with stocks also is that it's succumbed to monetary policy that you don't control. So if the Fed does decide to raise rates, a year from now, you don't know when they're going to do it. And if you don't know when they're going to do it, it's always a risk to you, right? With crypto, there's a lot of regulatory talks that are quite nasty for crypto. I think it's not as bad as some people think it is in terms of what the regulation might end up looking like. But then again, it's a risk because you don't know what it might actually end up looking like, and it's not economically controlled, right? This is in the hands of lawmakers to decide how crypto gets regulated, and so there's an increased risk there. And then there's gold. And gold, I think, is still a great investment. The only risk to gold these days is that if you own it in a trust on the stock market, that might effectively get yeeted downwards with the rest of the stock market. So I'm saying you might want to actually literally buy gold, like physical gold, and you can actually have fun with that, which is the fun part of physical gold. You can buy a high quality gold necklace and actually wear it if you want to, here and there. And gold is a great metal in that no matter what you do to it, you're not gonna mess it up as long as you don't lose it. So there you go. Now, so given all that, I talked a lot about the problems, the catalysts, and all that. What are some additional things that I'm doing to help combat these problems? Well, I'm spending. I don't have money. I have money, and a lot of it's in assets. But I'm scrapping it out like everyone else with the high cost of living of New York City. It's a fun time, but I'm definitely not in a great situation. But I'm spending like crazy, not buying assets only anymore. I'm just spending because I don't want US dollars. And, you know, maybe on the extreme end, I'll say this time, maybe a year from now, I'll be saying on the podcast, oh, hey, look, I thought that was extreme and that actually happened. But our US dollar may not be global standard by the end of 2022. That's how bad things are. I mean, many countries are already talking about it, about not holding US dollars anymore, and screaming at us in international conferences for our monetary policy that's screwing over the rest of the world, in their eyes at least. So, you know, a lot of people are divesting from US dollars in their reserves. Across allies or not, right? So we're not even talking about just people who don't like us. You know, I'm talking about everyone. So what can you do when you don't want the US dollar anymore, when you have no confidence in the US dollar? Well, you got to have some of it, like I said, in reserve as well. But the tone is a little bit different now. The first thing you need to do is look at what you own physically in your home and just really appreciate what you have. Now, you know, in a good economy, you can afford to not spend money. That sounds weird, but in a good economy, you could afford to buy a bunch of cheap things from Amazon, you know, and spend very little money on your goods. This is a very bad trap for you to continue doing. You need to change your spending habits like crazy. You need to spend a lot more on the items that you're buying. Anything you buy, spend more money. Spend a lot more money. I'll explain that in a moment. So, what items do you want to buy? Like, what inflationary protection things might want to have? The first thing to look at is items that hold value that you actually want or need, and I include want, by the way. So, and you know, something like gold might work in that category. So I might have been looking at this gold necklace for a long time, you know, in the store, and I might want that thing, but I'm like, it's too expensive. Buy it. That sounds weird, but buy it. Because why? You can resell it. It's gold, right? You're not buying it just for your pleasure anymore. You're buying it because you want to hold the US dollar's value in an object that is a different kind of risky than the typical assets that we normally have. So things that hold value. Now, I'll give you some examples because I spent thousands of dollars, actually, literally, you know, doing my inflation strategy. So no one can claim that I don't do what I say I would do, and it's been working well for me thus far. Everything that I've done for myself. So some of the things I've bought. I bought a cast iron skillet. You know, these things can be quite well. This skillet. Okay. Some things are expensive, some things are not. So this is not that expensive. But what it is it holds value, right? So it's literally a big chunk of iron, right? So just on a physical level, it's iron, and iron has value as a metal, right? Even if it doesn't have value as a pan, it will always have value as a metal. So I can always sell that pan to someone who would want to smelt it, right? This is like going back to, like, you know, older type thinking, but it's true. Whereas if I was using a non-stick pan, a cheap one from Amazon, a thin metal stainless steel covered with Teflon kind of thing, not only is it not going to last me as long because it has like bolted parts and all that kind of stuff that might come loose, and then the value of the thing goes down just from its lack of usability, but also the Teflon will scratch and scrape and, you know, go away, and then it'll become you know, not useful for yourself. So I'm saying buy something that you might use or want that holds value for long periods of time. My cast iron actually will probably gain value. If you look into the cast iron market, you'll see what I mean. But there's something called seasoning on cast irons, which necessarily requires you to cook on them. I don't fully understand the chemistry of it, but basically, if you buy a fully seasoned cast iron, you know, it's been seasoned for 20 years, that is going to be worth a lot more money than the new cast iron skillet. So things that hold value. Another example is, I bought my wife she picked out a Le Creuset. I don't even know what they're called. It's basically cast iron and enameled on the surface. It's very pretty. It's very expensive. What I'm essentially doing there is I'm giving her something to use. Right? It's useful for us. It'll make great food. It'll last a long time. It'll last forever. It has a lifetime warranty, which is the golden ticket. Right? You're really protecting your value if it has a lifetime warranty. Extremely expensive though. You might be like, oh man, this is something that only rich people buy, right? And I'm not rich, and I bought it. Why? As a warranty, lasts forever, and the value retains. So if I need in an emergency that money, I can just sell it, right? It functions as a different sort of emergency fund, right? But in the meantime, while I have it, I can use it. So it's better than holding on to inflating cash, right? So those are some examples of things that hold value. The second thing that you might want to buy are things that increase productivity and don't break. That's the caveat. So an example of this is we bought a food processor for our apartment, and a food processor allows you to chop food, makes food preparation a lot quicker. And I normally wouldn't splurge on a food processor, and I'd be like, that's something for bougie people, if I wasn't trying to spend money like a madman. And the reason why is because it increases productivity in our house. So not only do I store the value in the object itself that I could resell because it doesn't break, we bought an expensive model, that we know has a reputation and has resale value. I literally go on eBay and I go check to see how much of its value it retains. I bought that for that reason, but it also increases our productivity, which allows me to do more work, let's say, and bring in more money instead of, chopping carrots. It's a different sort of efficiency gain that you're doing. The last thing is items. If you own a business, especially items that produce or are necessary that you haven't bought yet. So if you're a business and let's say you need a camera, I know Ben's buying a camera as of late. So if you need a camera, buy it now. If you're on the fence about the camera, the price of that camera is going to go up dramatically as inflation goes up. And some of these things their prices have not inflated yet, right? Like they're the same prices they would have been, 3 years ago, and so buy it now. Don't hesitate. If it's going to produce for you, if it's part of your business, that is amazing. So buy it now because you might not be able to buy it later as your income dries up and the money you do have inflates. And the last thing to do. So, here I wanted to do an example. I had some props here. So this is something that we used to have a whole kitchen set of like these plastic, sort of like cookware stuff. This is the only remaining item from that set. And these are like cheap Amazon, probably cost like $20 as a set. Now these we replaced them with these wooden spoons, and these wooden spoons are a lot more expensive. But there's two things I get from this: a health increase because microplastics are bad for you. So I'm reducing the risk that I was accepting before for money reasons, and I'm reducing the risk by replacing with wood. And the wood is higher quality for cooking in general, will not break as easily, and a whole bunch of things that Steph knows about that I don't know. So. That's one example of the types of things that we're doing over here. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll wrap up, is debt. Debt. You need debt. That sounds weird again, but you need debt. At the worst case, you need any type of debt you can get your hands off that revolves, meaning once I use it, it comes back again, like a credit card. I can swipe it, pay it off, and then swipe it again, pay it off. It doesn't. No matter how many times I use it, no one revokes my privileges to my credit card. One of the reasons you need this and access to debt is because your life may literally depend on it. This sounds kind of weird because usually people, even with credit cards, people are like, you never use it, even if you can't pay for it, even in an emergency. In a financial crisis, if you have a job, let's say, and it's the difference between losing your job and being on the street, or putting gas in your car that you don't know that you can pay for. Put gas in your car. Don't be religious about not using a credit card, just for that reason alone, because financial crises don't last forever, right? You may not know where that money may come from to make up for it, but paying off the debt for the rest of your life is better than being homeless with your children. Okay, that's the reality of the situation. However you might disagree or agree with it. But the other thing is that if you're a business, you have access, and I haven't explored this yet. I haven't done this yet myself, so I can't vouch for it. But business debt is extremely good, and it's separated from your personal credit. It's separated from your like in terms of bankruptcy. If you set everything up right, if your business becomes bankrupt with your business debt, then you don't become bankrupt. No one comes after your assets if you set everything up properly. What I'm saying is, if there's any reason to become a business at all, any reason at all, and the definition of a business depends state by state, so you really have to do your own research on this. In New Jersey, for example, where I registered Ariella originally, in New Jersey, the definition of a business is as simple as trying to make money, trying to make a profit. So the moment I try to make a profit, whether I register or not, I'm a business. Which means I have access to all the benefits of a business the moment I'm trying to do that. Now, you don't have to be a mom and pop shop or something. You don't have to have an Etsy store. You don't have to do anything. The moment you try to make a profit, now or in the future, in New Jersey at least, again, look it up for your state, but I think that's actually a pretty common definition. The moment you can qualify to be a business, don't worry about whether you'll actually make a profit. Take all the benefits, the tax benefits, take the debt benefits, like what you could potentially acquire in terms of debt, like business credit cards and business lines of credit and all that kind of stuff that I can't go into right now in this episode. Take all of that and run. Like, for example, or here, I'll use Ben as an example. So Ben is in school right now. He's not doing anything that overtly would seem business-like, I'm sure. Actively at least, right? Or am I wrong about that? I don't want to assume.
No, you are accurate.
Okay. Now, Ben has a future where he does want to be potentially freelancing in his skills. So he might want to offer his skills as a private person, essentially as a business, to play the flute for certain media productions and stuff like that. He's not doing that now, by and large, but he has the intent to do it. And he has a lot of things that he needs in order to do those things. So, for example, he might need to buy a new flute, or something like that. He may need to drive to a destination or pay for public transport to go to a destination. He may need to live in LA. Oh, hey. So suddenly rent becomes an interesting thing. I can't tell you all the things because really I'm not an expert in the sense of being able to relay what the law is in certain areas and blah, blah, blah. But please look up business benefits in terms of debt and taxation and make yourself a business by any means possible. It's very easy to justify. It's not shady. The moment you try to make money now or in the future, most likely you are a business again. Look it up. But you need access to debt. And the reason why is you're looking at your credit card debt right now and you're saying, well, that's 20% APR. That's crazy high. If inflation is 10%, that 20% APR is now 10%. That's insanity. That's if debt is cheap. If I look at if I get a business line of credit from the local credit union or something like that, they're averaging around, because I've been calling around lately, averaging between 10 to 15%. That number is not going to stay like that because the banks need to keep up with inflation as well, right? But they're trying to hold their debt percentages as low as possible to try to keep attracting customers while we're in this sort of gray area of, are we going to die, basically. So take advantage of this time period. Go find a bank, become a business, Do whatever paperwork you need to do to insulate yourself from bankruptcy. Get access to debt. And if you are someone like me, a filmmaker, if at all possible, if you need a camera in order to be employed and you don't currently have a camera because yours broke or it's outdated and you don't have the money right now to pay for a $5,000 setup, go become a business, go to your credit union, get a 12% loan. If you can, I mean, this, we're not in the level yet where this is an emergency, right? So you still have to do the math and make sure you can pay it off. Don't be irresponsible. But that 12% loan is actually 2% for the time being. And that's insane. That's basically free. They're giving you free money. So don't miss up on that opportunity. I never thought we'd be in a time period where inflation would be so high that I would even be saying, that loans are effectively 2%. That's free money, basically. So yeah, I mean, that's my rant on inflation. Really the update kind of came down to things are worse than I thought they would be. So I was thinking about a lot of the things I was talking about last time, and I was like, a lot of these things you can't even do safely anymore or with the same level of confidence anymore. So what are alternative things? And I was thinking about all the stuff I have done. I'm literally looking, I need new shoes. I'm literally looking at buying shoes that I thought I would have no right to own because they'll last me 10 years. Right. And I'm looking at buying like $300 shoes, right. That are like basically like, they work in most situations, either whether it's being on set and being comfortable or going out on a date, with my wife or something like that. They look good, but they're a tried and true company that people have literally owned that model of shoe for 10 years and not had anything happen to it. So, that kind of thing. So that's my spiel. Any thoughts, Ben?
No, it's a lot of interesting stuff. I'm sure too. I mean, I don't know how. I just took a couple economics classes in college, but I'm sure that with the Build Back Better bill too. There's as part of the whole holdup with that getting passed is whether that's going to increase inflation or not. And of course, I know nothing about that, but obviously I know that's another part of the conversation too.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely controversial. I would say, I think it's, basically not something that shouldn't happen, especially, with a big unknown question mark. At the very least, we can say we don't know what's going to happen, when this money is dispersed. And that's scary because we're in an unprecedented time in general. We've just spent $9 trillion. That's not normal, So at the very least, you could say, let's wait, but yeah, I don't know. It's just do what's best for you, even if you don't care about the politics of everything and blah, blah. Just people out there, I just want you to protect yourself. That's really what, it comes down to, is being real with it and, protecting yourself. All right. Yeah, it was a long spiel. Thanks for sticking around for the whole thing. Any news in the music world?
Nothing that I can think of, although I probably wasn't paying enough attention this week with all my work. But nothing that I can think of.
Yeah, and I don't think I have much news either. Going back to Alec Baldwin, there's a lot of random shenanigans happening that I haven't been fully keeping track with because it seems like random shenanigans.
Didn't he was it the script supervisor who sued a whole bunch of people?
No, I don't think it might be this. It might have been the script supervisor. I haven't heard about that. But that might also be true. But I know the gaffer has also sued everyone already. His complaint is interesting because he basically says none of this really impacted me personally, but I'm doing this for justice. And I was like,
Uh, I,
yeah, sure you
I think
are.
it's okay. I think it's the script supervisor too,
Oh,
who
okay.
apparently was also injured slightly at the
Hmm.
in this, 'cause, like standing behind the director. I think, and it might be someone else, but I think it's the script supervisor who sued everyone too.
Okay. Yeah, like predicted, lawsuits are gonna fly. Like, this is insanity. Interestingly enough, the calls for Alec Baldwin and other people to be criminally investigated have not fully gone away, which is what I thought was going to happen. There have been some interesting conversations from Hollywood people about trying to press the issue, which I did not expect. um, ah, uh, Ms. Costello says script supervisor for emotional distress. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, you know, so that's interesting. I still don't think it'll happen. Um, uh, but it's good to see people understand that, or at least getting the word out that there was negligence of a criminal kind, at least what it seems like, on some people's behalf. And again, I just ask that whether or not it would have been normally prosecuted, that it is prosecuted. If it wouldn't be normally prosecuted in this kind of scenario, then, and you can justify that to me, then that's fine. Um, if the prosecutor would look at a similar situation, it was Joe Schmo number 1 and 2 and 3 involved, and they wouldn't prosecute it, and you can show that to me, then that's fine with me. But if it would normally be prosecuted, then I think it's not right to not prosecute. Not prosecute. So I understand it. um,
Actually, so I think the script supervisor also alleges that the gun wasn't supposed to be fired in the actual shot that they were rehearsing for anyway.
Yeah, I saw some. I saw some things like that too. Some mutterings like that too. I didn't get a chance to like properly look at it, so I'm not sure. If people dispute that or not.
No, I would assume the script supervisor would be somewhat aware of that.
Yeah, I would assume so too. It sounds like something that might definitely be the thing that has surprised me that's come out. That I feel relatively confident is probably true, given what people are saying and who's deciding to contradict who. It seems like the armorer might actually be one of the least responsible people on that set, and I put a lot of onus on her in my in my breakdown, and I also said that details would change over time. So, but the reason I say that is because she might not have been on set at all that day, which is kind of insane. Like, she might have had anything to do with what happened that particular morning. Um, so yeah, that's a mystery to me. I have, I'd have to read up more into it, and maybe I'll do an updated, episode in the future, because those are some of our most popular stuff. Is talking about this. People like morbid things, is what I learned looking at the analytics. So yeah, but if you want me to do an update, just let me know in the comments. Yeah, Ms. Costello says script did not call for gun to be shot based off what I've read. Might be true. Might be true. In which case, there are a lot more questions to ask.
Yeah, well, that's why, again, a script supervisor would be an interesting person, because they literally have access to the script and all the days, details.
Honestly, it comes down to, to me, and in either case, it comes down to, why'd you pull the trigger on a cocked gun at a human being? I still will never be able to get over that hump. You know, that is a real gun, because it is. Like, it's not plastic. I'll never understand that, but that will definitely add culpability in different places depending on what's going on. And Miss Costello says that the armorer is the one who called 911. Yeah, very well maybe.
The script supervisor.
Oh, the script supervisor. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, that very well maybe. I don't know. It's a crazy show. I think people are talking too much. People should just wait until the court of law. In my humble opinion, people are talking too much and potentially incriminating themselves unintentionally. So, you know, um, I don't really care. I guess what happens to them, whatever should happen to them, is what should happen to them. That's my opinion. Yeah. Is that pretty much it? I can't think of any other media news. I know our podcast is exploding, like the audio version, so I'm really excited about that.
I guess if you're a Star Wars fan, there's a whole lot of disappointment with Disney Plus Day.
Oh, yeah, how'd that go?
Apparently, so I guess I didn't pay much attention to it. I didn't even know it was a thing because I don't really pay attention to Disney Plus and all that and Disney's announcements. But I understand, for Marvel, they came out with all sorts of trailers and logos and stuff for all of their shows next year. Whereas for Star Wars, they had like a brief history of Boba Fett, and then a 1 minute video that shows nothing about the show with Ewan McGregor and the director of Obi-Wan Kenobi show talking about nothing really. And also the announcement the day before, I think maybe 2 days before, that the next Star Wars movie, which is I think being supposed to be directed by Leslie Headland.
I didn't even know there was. That's how.
Rogue Squadron, which was not supposed to be about the actual Rogue Squadron, which is a protagonist of a number of expanded universe books led by Wedge Antilles, but it's supposed to be not about that. Apparently, that has been put on hold indefinitely due to creative. At least what I've heard, that it has to do with both creative differences and also Leslie Headland being too busy with her other films. So.
Yeah, I would not expect anything from Disney on the Star Wars front. They have not proven anything.
At least nothing on the big screen.
That's true.
They do have tons of. Despite not doing anything for them on this thing, which I didn't know existed, but apparently a lot of other people cared about, they do have a whole bunch of shows that are supposed to come out on Disney Plus next year. And I guess technically this year, the Book of Boba Fett is coming out on December 29th. But
yeah, I wish Disney would explode. I mean, business-wise. That's what I mean, just to be clear. I'm not a big fan, so boo to any Disney news. Yeah. I think I can't think of anything else going on. I know Nathan talked about last week on the gaming side. The video game awards are happening, and the nominees have been announced. So if you want to look them up, you can look them up. And if you guys would like we haven't talked about this on our own, but if you guys would like, this might influence the answer, a watch party to any degree of any of these things and just have fun with it. Maybe invite some people on who might roast, have some funny things to say. Some people that we might want to pop in and out as a fourth person about these lavish award ceremonies. Just let us know, and we'll take it under consideration. As for next week, because it'll be the day after Thanksgiving, I don't know whether we'll have an episode of Mixed Media. We'll have to talk about it on our own. But if we don't, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And again, during those 2 weeks, there is a mixedmedia.locals.com Black Friday sale where you can get 40% off of our normal subscription, which has a ton of awesome perks. One of those perks is getting access to the live stream. That's a new perk that I'm going to be adding probably today, as well as access to the live whiteboard. And if you're an artist of any kind that we could comment on, that might be photography or even event videography or films or branding or music composition or your indie game or 3D modeling or a whole plethora of things. If you want to submit them, we love just looking at them and interacting with them in general. So if you want to guarantee that we'll do that for you, just go onto our locals page and sign up, and then we are yours as much as we can be. Besides that, we continue the conversation on our Discord, link in the description, as well as a link to anything else you might need is down there in the description. Thanks for everyone who hung around this entire time. I'm always admired if the counter is not 1 by the time that we're done. Depending on the platform you are, it might be 1, but I get to see the aggregates on our 3 platforms. So we've got a solid 7 people around, it looks like, which is awesome to see people sticking around. Our live numbers have been increasingly surprisingly good, so thank you guys for stopping by. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys whenever I talk to you guys.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye now.